Hey, everybody, welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. FloTrack podcast at gmail.com is our email address. Remember, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. You can also watch the show on FloTrack. Again, I'm Kevin. He's Lincoln. Good morning, sir. How are
Hello.
you?
Oh, doing pretty good. The sun's out. Seems to be a pretty nice day inside the house. I'm moving pretty soon, so my backdrop will soon change, and my location will be different. So that's some excitement to look forward to for those people who watch the video of this show.
I know people are just dying to know what's Lincoln's background going to be today.
Yeah, exactly. I even those listening on Apple or their podcast app, people are wanting to hear about what's in the background and what I've seen all those Zoom backgrounds that people can do. You can like edit
Mm-hmm.
yourself in the Himalayan mountains or on the Great Wall of China or something. So I don't know. I may have to work out something like that.
Where you're literally inside one of your wife's paintings, like trying
There
to
you
climb
go.
out.
I can be an object. I can be an object inside it. Yep.
We actually have news to talk about on today's show, Lincoln. We don't need to do Track's biggest what ifs part 3. I know people were calling for the trilogy.
Yeah.
I liked it so much that I ran it back on the second day. I thought you and Gordon did a really good job setting the table there. I wanted to get even nerdier, but we have actual news here. 2 bits of news that came over the wires, actual wires or literal the wire service. I picked it up this morning, went over to the old fax machine, came out. Yep. Actually, this one came last night. World Athletics, Lincoln, has moved the qualification window to, it doesn't start again until December 1st, 2020. What are your thoughts?
Mm. Did they put it on that December 1st so as in case the BU, what is it, the first BU
Yeah.
meet? Is that the target date? Is that for
That's going to
that?
be the most popular meet in the world this year.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to pile in to the BU Track and Tennis Center. There's going to be 9 heats of the 5K. It's going to be incredible.
My thoughts are a little scattered, I guess. I didn't see that big of a that big of an issue with this. Of course, one part of me wants to say, why did they even need to do this at all? But you do read the release, and it says, well, we want to make sure everyone has equal chance to hit Olympic qualifying. We don't want certain athletes in certain countries where the virus maybe isn't as widespread and they're returning to competition to have an advantage over a country of which, they're still dealing heavily with the pandemic and they can't compete and have those advantages. So I get that. But at the same time, kind of echoing what some athletes heard, like if there's track meets this season, why would those not count? I mean, if there's going to be diamond leagues, like why would World Athletics be hosting events of which you can't qualify for the Olympics? That is some confusing thing. And maybe it's conceding in their form or in their way that there's not going to be track in any form in at least until December. So that would mean no outdoor track. But I guess I don't understand why you have to say this and then also have the part where there actually could still be track this year. It just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Like I said, I get the first part of which you don't want athletes that are in places that haven't been as hard hit or have recovered enough to have sporting events, to have an advantage over countries that aren't in that position. But if the Diamond League returns or if track at a high level returns, why would those results not count is what I am kind of confused about. What were your thoughts about it?
I think if the Diamond League does return, they will change these regulations. These are not written in stone. It's a living document, and I think they would change it to September 1st or August 25th or whatever the date needs to be to make sure those meets count. The way I interpreted it is the same way you did in terms of, okay, there needs to be equity here, right? And not just country to country, but within countries, right? Like we can see even in the United States, someone who lives in New York is not having the same opportunities to train as someone maybe who lives in a state that's not as impacted by the pandemic, right? Maybe they're still able to access parks or trails, but that to me stood out. I think what they want to avoid here, I think what World Athletics wants to avoid here is a nation or nations essentially going rogue and hosting track meets that can qualify and endangering the health and safety of the athletes and or the fans or other meet personnel. So they're trying to eliminate any incentive to have a one-off sort of track meet. I was listening to something yesterday about the Belarusian Soccer Federation. It's the only soccer league that's still going, and they're basically ignoring the pandemic and they're like marching right on ahead with it. And FIFA hasn't stepped in and said anything yet. And the government there hasn't been very forthcoming about how many people have the coronavirus. So it's hard to get hard and fast information there. But I would guess that's what World Athletics is trying to get in front of, a situation where a country just decides, you know what, we're gonna do meets. We're gonna do meets. It's fine.
Yeah.
And then they start attracting other people to those meets from other countries, and then you have a situation on your hands where not forget equity. It's not like it's not safe, right? So there's two
Right.
parts to this. In the same way, the Olympic postponement to me was about two things. It was about, are you going to be safe at the Olympics, but also, is it fair? Is there a fair system to prepare and qualify for the Olympics?
Yeah. It was interesting to see some athletes be critical of it because I guess you could look at it as PR spin, but like the release says, the athletes do get 4 extra months of qualifying, a qualifying window out of this. Now, granted, there's a giant break in the middle of it, and
right.
Track may return, but I guess I don't really see too much of a downside. And your thought that they could always not move the goalpost, but move the time. If they decide track is fully ready to go, they could always just say, okay, we're the December 1st date is not good anymore. We're going to make it September 1st. Mm-hmm. They seem to be pretty locked into that, though, when they did say, results will still count for statistical purposes, but they're not going to enhance your world ranking or go to time qualifications. I don't really understand that, but I guess they really wanted to make it clear that they were serious about there being no advantage for anyone that could compete. There's going to be, I guess you could say, even if there's diamond leagues, well, some athletes are going to have an easier time traveling to it than others, and some countries may have travel bans and whatnot. But I would just say at this point, just kind of, if this is going to be their hard and fast rule, just wipe the diamond league and let's try again next year.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's almost like they press pause of like, okay, you could qualify from January until basically the beginning of April, although in the United States, everybody stopped competing in mid-March. And we did see some people pick up standards during that time, right? There were people who got qualifying times. So that wasn't for naught. And then, in December, we're just going to hit play again. And then they're going to have December, January, February, all the way through to, June? I'm guessing that's the end of the trials date there, June 29th, 2021, to get the standard. What is interesting, though, when you look outside of track into the marathon, this means that all those marathons that are scheduled for the fall, and they all have new dates, right? But none of those would count for Olympic qualifying. That obviously would not impact the Americans at all because they already got their trials out of the way and qualified. It's really not going to impact. I mean, there's no scenario, I think, where Kenya or Ethiopia doesn't send anybody who doesn't have a qualifying standard. Like, oh man, that 212 guy, he was really good, but just couldn't get the standard. I don't see that.
Off.
Yeah, but maybe that, person from another country, I guess we'll call it non-marathon power country, trying to get the time. And now they can't do it in the fall. And they also couldn't do it in the spring because London was canceled in the spring. Boston was canceled in the spring. There really weren't many opportunities to run it. So you basically have the winter and then you have the early spring to get that time if you didn't have it already. So that's that's tough. That's where you could see the composition of the field change a bit.
Right.
Um, I don't know ultimately if we're going to say, oh man, that Olympic field changed because of this window tightening. Um, what do you think it's going to do for meets that are held if they do have meets, just say in August or September? Not even Diamond League meets, but just domestic meets, like we talked with Nikki Hiltz about last week. What do you think it's going to do to those meets potentially, or how athletes approach those meets? It sounds like she wanted to race regardless, right? Standard or no standard, she just wanted to get
Yeah, I
out
think
there.
you do. Yeah, I think you're going to have a lot of athletes itching to come back regardless of standard. And I think, you know, if you're going to have a domestic meet and it's not a diamond league, the chances, say, of a 1,500-meter runner, like on the men's side, running 3:35, or, you know, a 10,000 running 27, whatever, 24, whatever it is going to be pretty low. But that said, if you did do something like that in that window, I mean, I don't think you're going to see athletes trying to rip a fast 10K if standards aren't going to count. So I don't know what it'll definitely take away some of the excitement of it, but I think that's a far-fetched scenario anyways. I don't think we're going to have track in any form in 2020. I'm not a medical expert. I just, you know, I'm texting buddies with Anthony Fauci, but just kidding. But you know, I think I think this is all going to end up being kind of a moot point, because I don't see track in any form here in the States, or abroad happening in 2020. And add in the fact that even if it did, I don't know, add in the fact that it really is only for prize money and not much else, I guess, bragging rights. And that's even more so. I just don't see it happening. There's so many factors right now working against it, chief among them safety. And I don't know, doesn't feel like we're any closer here in the United States to having track than we were last week. So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, they are, I don't want to get too much into the medical side of things, but there was some scaling down of the estimates, and things like New York, they saw a little bit of flattening. You are the baseball expert, though, on this podcast. Explain what's been going on in baseball the last 2 days, because there was an idea that was floated, and then I think they were walking it back as of this morning in terms of when baseball would come back. And I think that's going to be very instructive to what happens to other sports like track and field.
Yeah, pretty interesting and pretty extreme measures to try to get sports back. They're basically thinking of starting the season, not a determined date yet, but May was floated, and having the entire league play games in the Phoenix area and basically be quarantined before and after games, and have certain restrictions about where athletes sit. I don't really know what the media outline is, or if they figured out logistics for how they're going to stream or televise the games. But basically all 30 teams or whatever it is would play in the Phoenix area, even not just in the Diamondback Stadium, but in other locations as well. And then they would be cut off basically from the rest of society. And I think this would be dependent on rapid testing. But, you're talking about athletes, like I don't think they'd be able to have their families with them. And you're just spending basically all this time isolated. So it'd be like this weird, for lack of a better term, it's like being in prison and playing a professional sport. But baseball's so desperate to get back in some form, and obviously they would have interest from streaming partners and fans, and it's just more of, is it going to be logistically possible? Track is way too big of a global sport to even consider something like that, obviously. And not to mention, like, baseball is a sport you need to train, but you get in the cage a little bit, you lift some weights, and throw the ball around, you're ready to go. But track's quite a bit different than that, obviously. So it's not a situation that you could take, copy and paste from track to track. But it's very interesting to think the thinking of Major League Baseball thinking, we're going to put this in one city, we're going to tightly control this, no fans. There's going to be social distancing measures among players. We're going to have them sit in the stands. Very extreme. Yeah, that's what I read. They wanted them I'm pretty sure I read that right, that they not having them in the dugout, but have them like in the top, not top row, but the first row of the stands, and separate each other out. So it's trying to respect all social distancing, stuff like that, which I don't really understand how you do when you have runners on base next to the fielders, but
I mean, at that
But
point,
getting
you're
creative out
changing.
there, yeah,
I mean, but at that point, you're
yeah,
really changing the complete dynamic of the sport. You're not just removing how the sport is consumed. You're like actually
yeah,
saying, "Oh yeah, yeah, a third base coach. How about you be the ninth row of the stands coach
yeah.
instead? Can you back up a little bit?" Um, so have they backed off of that? I thought I saw
Well, they got a lot of
a headline.
criticism. Yeah, they got a lot of criticism for it, and I think they were clarity was needed where there wasn't clarity. It's just a proposal, and as
Yeah.
people were writing on top of the report, a lot of hurdles to clear. Them getting these rapid tests and not taking them from people who might need them more than Major League Baseball players, not
Mm-hmm.
endangering workers who aren't not further endangering the community. You're asking people to be sequestered for months on a time, and that could be really, really difficult. I mean, the least of the
Yeah.
concerns is like the mental health of these baseball players. But I mean, you're asking them to, a lot of these young athletes to separate from families. That's obviously difficult. But it could just, it, things are so crazy right now, and there's money is so desperate to start churning again in the sports world that you wonder if it's possible, and it could set the model for what other sports do. Yeah, I got a lot of criticism. People were kind of taking it as like it was a completely sussed out plan that was ready to go in a few weeks. I mean, that's not the case. It could be 2 months away, or it could never happen. We don't know. But
Well, they
you
said
know,
May though, didn't they say May? Wasn't
they
May
said
floated?
May. They didn't
That's three
specify if it
weeks.
was May. Yeah, they didn't specify it was May 1st, or it could be the end of May, so it could be
Mm-hmm.
closer to 2 months away. But it's people. We know we work for a live media, live sports company. People they're going to get support from people who stream sports. They're going to get support from a lot of people, and if they find a way to safely test without taking tests out of a more susceptible community, I think it's something to consider. But there's just a
Yeah.
lot they're going to have to figure out before that's even remotely possible.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if that timeline, so say it is May 31st or even June something,
Yeah.
I would think then, I mean, by August, would it be realistic to, I mean, you just never know. And especially because you hear people talk about it, it's like it could come in waves. So then you could have a
Right.
situation where you have a track, and you got tracks different. You're not going to be able to, you don't have a season in the same way. You're not going to be able to sequester the athletes in that same
Right.
fashion. I think it just becomes a situation where it's like a cost benefit analysis for track. Like, is this even? Yes, we want to have something, but man, is it really? Is it really? Is it really? Really worth it? I know USATF was talking about doing a US championship this year, like late in the late in the summer, perhaps even in the early fall, depending on how you define fall. I mean, September technically is still summer, right? That's always been confusing to me. It's like September 15th, first day of fall. It's like, no, feel like they should make it like even month breaks, I feel like, with the seasons. I know that doesn't line up with all the astronomers out there and how they forecast things, but that's neither here nor there.
Cool. I like it.
Yeah. But anyway, like USA's could so if they're talking about having a US meet, even if there's not world championship standards on the line or world rankings on the line, I mean, that's another thing that they're going to have to figure out.
Yeah, I don't see that one happening, but I just don't see the athlete interest there. What do you're not I guess the world could be totally different. And I think that's the situation with baseball is so many people are taking the world as it is right now and saying, well, this isn't possible. Major League Baseball or whatever saying, well, it could look different in 6 weeks. And that, track did that. And like the US championships could, take place safely, then maybe there would be some interest, but it's hard to visualize right now. It's hard to see that and in a time of severe crisis, even consider that. And I don't even know
The
if that's
tough part is,
necessary.
well, the tough part is this stuff takes planning, and
Yeah,
especially track, like all the people that are involved in staging a track meet. So you can't just say, hey, we're going to have meet XYZ next weekend and then go,
yeah,
right? You're going to have to put several months and in some cases, like big meets, like Olympic trials or World Championship, years into planning. So, I mean, imagine the situation where you say, okay, things look good to go back in whatever month. You start planning this meet, you're getting volunteers, people are buying plane tickets again, everything's happening, and then the situation devolves, and then you're calling off the meet again. And I think
Right.
that's the nightmare scenario. In the same way, people have talked about this within the context of the NBA, right? You bring all the players back, and then what happens if there's another positive test the
Right.
first week back? Then what do you do? Okay, then you scrap it again, and everything that you did there before was for naught. I think isn't that sort of what you're implying when you're saying there's not going to be track this year? Is that sort of underlying feeling of, hey, we could bring this back, but you're always going to be wondering if it's too soon.
Yeah, and you listen to a lot of experts, and they're saying that this is gonna, like you mentioned earlier, it's gonna come in waves. So who's to say that? Right, like exactly what you said, that something severe isn't going to happen right around a time when you plan this, and it could elevate, and we're going to be the thought of us, immersing ourselves back in society and then being asked to social distance again is weird when it comes to sports, because how do you time around that? You can't really time anything perfectly, because we don't know how this virus is going to go, and that's what makes it strange to time this. It's like, oh, I hope by September it's going to be, we're in the phase of which we're allowed to be back in society, and then it seems like we're just waiting for an outbreak to happen again. It's a weird. I know sports need to run, athletes need to make money, and all the economies of each individual sport need to be restarted again, lest there be dire consequences for a lot of people involved. But we're still at the stage right now that sports don't matter in the sense of safety does, and so putting things and trying to find windows of which could fit while also risking the health. And if you have one coronavirus case, you got to shut the whole thing down. I mean, obviously, and the precedent's been set with what the NBA did, and that's the huge risk with all these things. Not to mention the fact that non-athletes have to be involved and around when there's things like this, and maybe non-athletes are older and more susceptible, and so it's not just young healthy athletes that are going to be putting themselves at risk. There's so many other factors, and that's what was mentioned in the criticism of the baseball thing, and would be mentioned in the criticism if track tried to do something like this. And that's why I think you just wait it out till 2021. You have no controversy, and you hope that we've even, I don't know if we'll have fully rid ourselves of this virus by then. I think a lot of people are saying this could start to be a seasonal thing and be more and more present. Maybe we have a vaccine by then. I don't want to turn this into a medical podcast because I really don't know what I'm talking about. But my long-winded point is track in any form just seems whatever, the very unself-aware. It doesn't need to happen maybe to the level of baseball. Baseball is just such so many people depend on that for income, and it's such a rich sport relative to track and field. I don't know. It's just a totally different ball game.
I think, good pun there, by the way. I think we both hope we're wrong, from a safety perspective, obviously, but it would be incredible if by August or September, all the medical experts agree and it's possible to have sports and live our lives. Like that would be amazing. That would be incredible. I think we would all wish for that. But I could maybe see a situation where, like, late in the summer, athletes are at least able to maybe do like little one-off pop-up meets. Again, things that don't require a lot of people, things that don't require advanced planning or travel, but this group wants to get together and do some sort of time trial, or these clubs that are in close proximity to one another could potentially do it because they've developed a test or something, or that specific area has been cleared to compete, and they've been able to relax some of these restrictions. Let's talk about 2022 though, right? Because there's not enough uncertainty in 2020 or 2021. So let's fast forward to 2022.
Yeah, we've got 2021.
We got to figure it out.
Some people, we got to figure it out. It's all mapped, Yeah, go to 2022. What do we got?
We have World Athletics Championship dates. It's going to be in Eugene, Oregon, but it is officially moved to 2022. July 15th to the 24th. So it does not conflict with the Commonwealth Games. I know your favorite games that honors the Queen, and it does not It does not conflict with the European Championships. Here's a quote from Sebastian Coe. This will be a bonanza for athletics fans around the world. The fans will be treated to 6 weeks of absolutely first-class athletics.
Oh, that's the only class of athletics I like is first class. You try to give me second class athletics. Get that out of here. It's early. I mean, that's obviously the first observation.
Mm-hmm.
That's really early in the year. So will we have, I don't know. Will we have U.S. championships in late May or, maybe I guess early June? And
NCAA's
yeah.
NCAA's is June 8th through 11th that year. So I would guess the
you got to
next
have
week
it the week after then. Yeah, you got to have it the week after, right?
Yeah, you would.
Wait,
and then you'd have.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to ask, is USA scheduled yet or no?
No. It's not scheduled. Okay. So, but if you put it a week after, if you put USA's a week after, I mean, that's what they were going to do this year for the Olympic trials. And I think that's what they're going to end up doing next year for the Olympic trials, right? It's still going to be that same quick turnaround. So you'd probably have NCAA's end on a Saturday. So that'd be the 11th, right? Sunday would be the 12th, Monday the 13th, Tuesday the 14th, Wednesday the 15th, maybe Thursday the 16th. So it goes the 16th through the 26th. No, 25th, okay. 16th through the 25th. And then you have the 25th to July 15th. So it's a quick turnaround. But look, they don't have to travel. American athletes don't have to travel.
That's true. That's a good point.
So it works. And I don't know if that was part of the calculus here. I'm sure they consulted them, but it's just basically 3 weeks after. I like that more. Like, to be honest, I don't like the whole, and now there's 6 weeks until Worlds. Like, I like it when it builds into it. Maybe there's one meet in the interim or something just to keep people sharp. But I think, I mean, if that's the qualifying meet, like you don't have your state qualifier and then 4 weeks off and then state in high school. That doesn't happen.
That's true.
You have the meet before, it's not NXN regionals, 8 weeks of darkness and then NXN. Like the one thing leads to the next thing. So I like it. And I'm glad that they preserved the integrity of the multi-sport European championships as somebody who's a fan of all the European championships.
Again,
handball.
I mean, so much first class athletics, first class handball.
That was my handball impression.
They've had to settle for second class water polo, but whatever. I think they threw some dust in the, as you and your podcast have dubbed it, the Bowerman Towerman. They threw dust in, and the dates were flashed across the top of New Hayward Field to decide when the new dates would be for the 2022 Eugene World Championships. That's how they went with this. That I don't know where I got that. That's just where I decided to go with that. I don't know. We've become dates reporters or dates. Like, ooh, here's the big news of the day. Dates. 2 years in okay.
Link covered great. Dates.
Yeah. Date. Circle your calendar in July 24. Yeah.
They were Commonwealth and Euros, and that was the only sticking point. It's like, okay, build the Diamond Leagues around that, and then you're good to go. It just, I thought it was funny when they're talking about 2021 Olympics. So like, oh, they're gonna have to work with all these federations to make sure they don't overlap. It's like, no, they're the Olympics. They're gonna be like, here's when I'm getting Olympics figured out. Bye.
Yeah. They spoke about all the hurdles they had to go over, and then it was like 3 days later. All right, here's the dates. Yeah, it's like a parent.
I got to consult with all these people.
Yeah. It's just like, no, we'll decide. We're good. Yeah, thanks. Okay. You can move around a couple games.
Yeah. So, all right. Wait, what dates are we missing then? Since we're date correspondents, we don't have do we have the trials dates for next year? I mean, I know we have the Olympic dates now, the World Championship dates. We don't have USA's for 2022. I mean, you need to be covering this. This needs to be at top of mind for you right now, Lincoln. Is when these dates are.
Calendar for FloTrack. I don't think
one thing that's going to be interesting though is, I mean, we knew that this was not going to be the case, but Remember last October where we were?
Well, early October would have been Doha.
I mean, even into like October 3rd or 4th or something, we were in Doha.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a long way from that, both with the Olympics and with these world championships. They're going to be done. Well, the Olympics are going to be what, first week of August will be done, and then these world championships will be done in in uh, in July. So we can at least say that the era of September, the pinnacle of the meet
Yeah.
being pinnacle of the season being in September, at least for 21 and 22 is not the case.
Yeah, except for the 2029 World Championships just got awarded to the equator. So just kidding. No,
Congrats,
that's nice.
guys.
It's nice to yeah, it's nice to have that era of Halloween track and field. Hopefully, in the past, I like my peak track and field in the summer.
One thing I liked about it though was having the Diamond League conclude before Worlds, which
good.
now that's gone. We're gonna go back to Zurich and Brussels being way late in the year and a cherry on top of the Sunday. I mean, I think they'll move other meets forward. Like I think we'll see that April Doha inaugural Diamond League set up again too. Like everything will get bumped up a little bit, but you're still gonna have at least three, probably maybe in some of these years, and upwards of 5 Diamond Leagues after the big show.
So as far as this season, what is it? The next one to either go or I guess could stay is the Prefontaine Classic. Like that one has not been postponed yet. I mean, when is that announcement coming?
Well, we also cover postponements as well.
Yes.
So postponements and dates are the two things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm surprised with every passing day that they haven't. I don't know what I don't know.
I mean, is Hayward Field done? I don't know. Like, have they been working on it in this? Like, can they? We were just talking off air that construction has been going on around Austin. Things are forging ahead. Maybe if they shouldn't be, but I don't know what the status is of Hayward Field. Are they still working on it? There's a lot of people involved that need to be close to each other. That would seem dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing they are. I don't know if they're going at the same rate. I mean, maybe they're trying to salvage some sort of like truncated pre-classic, but I mean that's that's early June, right? Isn't that what it was?
Yeah, we're inside 2 months.
Yeah. I would guess that we're going to hear about that soon. But you're right. Don't you have your cancellation doc right next to your date doc on your Google Drive there?
I allow Race Results Weekly's David Monty to cover that. He's been going through and building Excel sheets, I think, discerning which meets are canceled. Yeah. He's only up to May, up through May. So June is his next victim there, which he's gonna. But
he's been doing a good job. Shout out to David. He's been covering this thing.
Yeah.
You're surprised about what?
That the pre-classic is still on. I mean, there's just so many things. I mean, there's going to be plenty of track in the next couple of years at Hayward Field. We don't need to open it up with the sports worlds. I don't want it to be let's not have track be the first event back.
Can you imagine
in the U.S.?
It's like baseball and golf are still waiting, and they're like, they just forgot to cancel the pre-classic, and people just show up. It's like Renaud Lavillonaire's like on the pole vault. Just let's go, guys.
I can't. There's just too many nightmares. It says is we're going to have the international, not the Bowerman Mile, but whatever the international mile is, and we brought in people from every country, and we even have a high schooler in this one. Check this out.
Yeah.
It's like, we've got young people and people from all. It's just, it maybe wouldn't be a good look. I just don't know how the pre-classic survives this year, but
yeah. Well, we'll wait and see. Perhaps more news tomorrow when you and Gordon are doing the pod. We got some emails I wanted to read here.
Yes, good.
FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. We got one here from Niall yesterday. He sent it before we recorded the pod because we answered this question. He's talking about the what ifs. He says, what would the NCAA be like the past few years and now if there was a season, if athletes like Brazier, Drew Hunter, Lyles, Sidney, McLaughlin, Norman, Ry Benjamin never left, especially Drew Hunter, where would he be right now at training with Oregon versus with the pros? He would also have way less experience in college. Thoughts? So we talked about Hunter and Lyles specifically yesterday, but how about those other names, Lincoln? Brazier, Sidney, Norman, Benjamin.
Yeah, a couple things. Well, let's get this right off the bat. Gordon's Drew Hunter takes were poor yesterday. I was on my run and trying to avoid stopping and throwing my phone about how saying he would just be another Oregon guy. I'm like, where have you been the last couple of years? I know Drew Hunter hasn't like broken any world records or anything, but he'd be like.
So you agree with me? You agree with me on that one?
I don't know what he was. He'd just be another like what? We're talking about a guy who ran like 357 in high school. Like, and well, people run 403. Yeah, there's a difference between 403 and 350. Anyways, yeah, I was not there for those takes.
I like it. You should have called in.
Yeah.
Lincoln from Springfield, you're on.
Yeah. hey. Yeah, where would I mean, well, Sidney would have lowered her collegiate record. I mean, the records would be faster. I don't know that. Obviously, the NCAA would be much more intriguing. I mean, we would have thrilling 4x4s with, like you guys mentioned, like, if Grant Holloway and Ry Benjamin and Michael Norman was still there, we'd have great matchups between Florida and USC in the 4x4. Sidney would probably be running every distance by now, from 100 up to 400 hurdles. Like, I mean, it would just be a dream, obviously, but that's the problem. Those athletes want to get paid for their services, and that they're totally likely to do so, or they're totally deserve to do so. And that makes sense. The NCAA would be insane though. And it, maybe it would, I don't want to say hurt the development of some other athletes, but it's good that some athletes that would otherwise not get the chance, if those athletes didn't immediately go pro, to shine. Now they have that chance to shine. So I don't know how it would tangibly affect. I'm not really interested in team races. Like, I don't really care about that because people forget who wins the team titles roughly 10 minutes after. But records would be faster, and I guess the entertainment level of relays would be faster. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying I remember who wins the team race.
Do you?
Brazier's interesting. Yeah. Brazier's interesting, but Brazier's gotten to the point where in his career now where you could make an argument for either path, and it doesn't really matter. It's like he is the 2019 world champion and he's the best 800-meter runner in the world. So you can't argue with how he went about it. There were some hiccups in the early part of his pro career, specifically when it came to championship racing, but that could have happened as well. Like, he could have just blown everybody out for a couple of years in college and then had rough patches when he became a collegiate or a pro runner at that point and was running in diamond leagues. But it's tough to look at a guy and be like, yep, you did it wrong. You're only the world champion and clearly the best in the world. Sorry, man. Like,
well, all these athletes that all these athletes that were mentioned have basically packed in a 4-year collegiate career in 1 or 2 years. I mean, all those athletes I think we mentioned were collegiate record holders, and what else did Brazier have to do? He ran freaking 143 as a college freshman. I mean, go pro, and same with Sidney. And Ry Benjamin, I know, was a couple years more than a freshman, but they didn't have anything else, obviously, to do. I don't know how it changes other than we just get to see a lot of athletes really running fast. Maybe Brazier gets bored and tries the 1500 as well. I don't.
Well, that's the one thing you would have seen other events. Sydney's 400 PR would be faster, I think, because she would have run. Yeah, she would have run some 400s this year. But I mean, you look at the race count, the total, and this year it doesn't really matter because the season got canceled. But remember, Grant Holloway competed 45 times or something last year. And then this year, literally one, I think, right? He ran one hurdle race or one meet. I guess he ran 2 races.
He ran,
and that's
I think 2 or 3 because he ran like prelims and something else. But hey, last year you were just like we were talking about covering dates. You were the authority on how many races Grant Holloway had on his legs. Mm-hmm. If you remember in the press conference, somebody asked a question of sorts, and he was like, "I don't know, how many races have I done? Anyone know?" And you were like, 46 or something. I bet that moment felt good for you. Yeah.
It was day 9 in Doha. And you make some weird decisions by day 9 in true. Doha, day 8 in Doha.
Yeah. I was on Tila. I asked Mondo Duplantis a question without recording it or having any plans to do anything with this quote. That was a good moment.
You were just sitting. You're just like,
hey,
hey
got a
Mongo,
question here.
I'd like to know a few things. Yeah. I don't know if you got to the point of the podcast at the end when I was reminiscing on Doha with Gordon and how much I missed it and how much I was going through all those old interviews to pull out all the Grant Holloway stuff because it's Grant Holloway Day on our site. And I was like, man, we thought this was abnormal. Like, we're staying up till 4 a.m. And it's like the global pandemic was like, hold my beer. Like we're gonna get wet. Like that seems like the most normal thing I've done. Is travel halfway around the world into a desert and interview track athletes. Yep. All right, here's one from Austin. Ultimate what if scenario. What if you were to take all U.S. marathoners in history in their prime, put them in Alpha Fly? Who takes the top 3? Naturally, it will vary by course, but who takes top 3 for the men and for the women at Boston versus Berlin?
Okay, what's the last part? Who takes top 3 in Boston versus wait, what?
Berlin. He's just saying hilly course versus flat course. All time though. I mean, all time. I mean, I think now Khalid Kanuchi switched allegiance from Morocco to the United States midway through his career. But correct me if I'm wrong. He had 204, 205. Well before in dead shoe era. So I think he would be there. I think
Ryan Hall, man, give me some Ryan Hall.
Yeah, on either course, I think would roll, and I think you got to go Rupp on either course. I think those 3 would be the same. I think those 3 would be the same for. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to bet against Meb in Boston. So take out Kanuchi and throw in Meb for me for that top 3. I'll go Rupp, Meb, and Hall for the men.
Yeah.
For the women,
just Rosie Ruiz every time.
I mean, do you go like Joni? Do you go Joni, Dina Castor, and Shalane? I mean, you got to put Linden in Boston too. I would put Linden in Boston.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who else. I mean, yeah, you always want to put the greats who, as you said, ran in the dead shoe era.
That's not mine. That's one of the House of Run listeners. I don't remember who it was, but
I like that. No, I mean it's like the dead ball era in baseball. That's great. That's a nice pickup. I like that. Those all make sense. I'm trying to think of one that's like more off the wall. I don't know if Meb would have been a super responder. He's a heel striker, so
but his heel would have hit and he'd have boing, boing.
Yeah, boing. I mean, he couldn't have even worn them. They would have been so advantageous for him. They just would have shot him through. Yeah, I mean, I still pick the same guys and the same women. I don't know too much. You want to pick the people who won medals and were dominating their eras. So, yeah, Joni, Ryan Hall would make sense. I mean, Ryan Hall can run 204 in Asics. I think he can run 203 in Superman shoes. So that's where I would like to go. I still think the grades that we recognize would still be the grades, and that's also largely because I don't put as much weight on the shoes as some other people. They would run faster, of course, but okay, everyone's running faster right now. So,
you know who was good before the shoes came out? Eliud Kipchoge.
He was still good. Yeah. I've
Here's
heard
Ryan.
that he won a marathon without insoles.
Yeah, he won some other ones before that too. Here's Ryan. My most what if question is: what if Centro did not go to the front and force a 2:14 first 800 in Rio? If Kiprop went to the front and took it out in 1:53 and pace held, what are the results of the 1500? This is right in your wheelhouse, Lincoln, because it has to do with Centro, which you like talking about, and 1500 meter tactics, which you like talking about.
Yeah, well, in Doha, when he asked about it, even 3 years on, you know, you're going to ask the Olympic champion about their Olympic victory, I guess, in a post-race interview, regardless of how long ago it's been. But he is of the opinion he would have won that year. Of course he is, but that he would have won that year regardless of the circumstances. However, if it would have been a fast race and Kiprop had taken it out, I'm of the opinion that McLuffy would have gone back-to-back because I think he would have picked off Kiprop at the end. Maybe Kiprop would have won, but he was also was he injured in that 2016 final? I mean, there was something
Who
not
knows?
right with him. Who knows what's going on with Kip
Yeah.
Rupp? Yeah, I think McLuffy would have won back-to-back titles. That's what my thinking would have been, because fast races, he kind of sits back and kicks well.
I mean, 1:53 though is
Well,
super
yeah, that's
fast.
fine.
Like if they went that quick, I think you could have seen a lot of carnage, and maybe Centro does climb back. I think the least advantageous to Centro would be fast but doable for like the field, like
Yeah,
a
like
158, 157 sort of setup
mm-hmm.
where then they have a big third lap. I think would have been tough, but man, credit to him, he played that perfectly. One thing that we learned about McLuffy in 2019 was he's still good. So he could have won
Yes.
in 2016 just based on how good he was in 2019,
Yeah.
despite nobody knowing where he was and him saying
Nobody
Hakuna
was
Matata
more
when you asked him.
excited. Right. Nobody was more excited about the postponement because he likes to disappear for 2 years at a time anyways. So McLuffy was like, great, this fits in perfectly with my training.
Nobody was going to find me for 2020 anyway.
Yeah.
This is from Douglas. I'm sure y'all are just as bored as I am. I was just thinking which 4x4 would win in 2019, 2020. What do y'all think? So hypothetical 1, Team USA 400 meter hurdlers. Spencer, Muhammad, McLaughlin, Little, or Corey Carter if healthy. Team 2, Jonathan Francis, Wembley, and then Ellis or Felix.
Oof. I mean, I'd have to look at that 400 PRs, 400 4x4 splits.
Nope, you can't have. You don't have
Spencer,
time for it. Go.
Done.
Go. What's your pick?
I'm going to stick with the 400 crew over the. I do think over the long run, over 3 minutes and 20 seconds, whatever it is. I still think the pure 400 athletes are going to show out. Now I know, that Sydney has pure 400 speed and Muhammad does as well, but and Spencer I think is a converted 400 meter runner, but I still would.
Yep.
I mean, Wembley is good. Ellis is fantastic. If Felix is running well, that's a really good group.
Yeah, I'd take the other team though. I'd take the hurdlers. I mean, both of these teams had 2 members on the 4x4, and then but Spencer, especially if she had time to just train and focus on it, but Spencer's a legit 400 meter runner. And then I don't think there's too much drop off to Little there if you put Little in there. I think. I mean, could Sydney be as good as Jonathan?
Oh, could she? Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Jonathan hasn't shown her full ability yet. She could be a sub 49 runner in 2021. We don't really know. I mean, she's coming off college or a long college season, ran 49.6 in Doha, and I don't think we've seen the full scope of her. I like her attitude, the way she composes herself. I think she is vastly underrated. One of the most underrated performances by an American in Doha was that fourth place finish.
Mm-hmm.
She's game. She can deal with Sydney on the backstretch. I'd like to see those two duke it out.
All right, we got one more here from John in Teddington, England. He's got a couple here for the older listeners out there. What if Obi Moore had gone to Baylor, and what if Skeets Nehemiah had not gone to football in 1981? Now, Lincoln, as we know from the show, is not old, so he will not be qualified to answer either of those questions. But he does love him some Kipchoge. So John also asked, what if Kipchoge had stayed racing the 5 and the 10 until after 2016? Consider that A, before the 2010s, when money disappeared from the European track circuit and flooded into the road racing scene, all of the great 5,000 track runners tried to compete over 10,000 before moving to the roads. And B, given that he is so good at the marathon, we can assume that had he trained for it, Kipchoge would have been better at 10 than 5. He ran 26:49 age 22, so he probably could have gone sub 26:40. I think in this parallel universe, he would have run the 10,000 from 2013 to 2016. In 2013, he'd have been outkicked by Farah and Jalan. In 2015, he'd have worked with Cam Ward to run the legs off of Farah and won gold. In 2016, they'd have tried to do it again, but with Cam Ward in less good shape, Farah would have hung on and won. What do you think?
I look at it from the marathon industry. I think it would be an entirely different thing. You'd obviously have a lot of people not running as fast. And who knows if even the Alpha Fly, Vaporfly line of shoes would have been a thing. I think some of these shoes were built to help the greatest marathoner in the world and to be marketed around one specific athlete. So if he's still on the track that late, maybe that entire industry looks different. And obviously we wouldn't have a sub 2 at this point. I mean, maybe we would, but if he's focusing on the track, he's not doing perhaps as much mileage, and so that that lessens that, and he's not ready to run 1:59:40. So the marathon looks obviously different. The world record is slower. Bekele probably isn't pushed to run 2:01:41. The women's record, I mean, he's really influenced the entire marathon scene, and I think a lot of the records, not obviously just himself, are credit to him. And you could argue that the shoes are so advanced because they were helping to chase some time that was thought to be ridiculous without him. So that looks entirely different. I don't really care about litigating who wins what medals. I just like to always assume Farah would have won because that's the era I grew up on. I grew up on athlete A could have run the kick out of Mo Farah, and that of course never happened, even with Kipchoge. So I just always assume Farah is going to win unless Mukhtar Idris likes to show up. Maybe that changes that. But this, like I said, the litigation of how to beat Farah and this athlete could have done that, I'm not really interested in because it just never really happened other than one time, or I guess 2 times in 2011 and 2017. But my biggest takeaway would have been that the marathon industry looks different. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just was thinking he could have. I mean, is there a reason he couldn't have been Jalan in 2011 and beaten Farah then? Right? Like, was he? When did he start?
Remind me what Kipchoge
Pull Kipchoge up.
He was,
yeah. Pull him up for 2011. I can't do it. Otherwise, my entire computer will come to a standstill.
That's fine.
I used all my stats in Doha for Grant Holloway. My computer doesn't work anymore.
There you
go. Pull up Kipchoge 2011. And see what he was doing. Was he still? He was still on the track, right?
Running track. Yeah, running track. Gosh, it looks weird to see Kipchoge in 6th place. Yeah.
Was he in that race?
2011, he ran the 5,000. He got 7th. This is just crazy. He got 7th. Okay, so he was not in the 10,000.
Okay.
He was 7th.
So I guess
in
it is
5.
okay. So it is crazy to think that he would have won the 10,000. So I mean, maybe he would have just been that guy. Maybe his time in the track was done and he had a really good run on the track and he's just an exceptional marathoner. So I think thinking he would have gone from not being able to get a medal in the 5, not even being in the top 5 in the 5,000 to winning gold is a bit of a stretch. I guess John here is saying John's saying he didn't put enough time into the 10, right? He didn't do the normal progression of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many 10s has he run on the track?
He's running a couple every year. Let's see what he does in 2013. 2013 is when he moves to the roads forever, because 2012, a very, very poor year outdoors for Kipchoge. 7th in the Kenyan Olympic trials in the 5,000. Maybe that was the turning point for him. He's like, F this, man. I'm going to, he gets 7th in the Olympic trials in the 5,000, and then he goes to that famous Paris race, 5,000, runs 12:55, and only gets 8th. And he's just like, well, that's all 12:55 gets me. How about I just go run 14 flat 10 times in a row? And then,
well, he's perfect. That's what I'm saying. Like, this guy is perfectly suited for this distance. It took him a while to find it, but he found it. So you're right. I mean, maybe the exact same thing. I guess, the question is, okay, if there were more 10,000s, maybe that would have been different. But the way the 10,000 just looks like a cousin of the 5,000, and maybe he would have made it different. But it always seems like it's people for both. In the marathon, though, I'm trying to think of all the people. This is like a Jordan effect, right? All the people who didn't win titles because Michael Jordan was there. Same thing with Kipchoge. Mm-hmm. Like, who would have been a star in the marathon? Who else could have got titles if Kipchoge wasn't winning race after? Like, is Wilson Kipsang's era extends longer? Maybe Wilson doesn't have a whereabouts failure and then gets arrested in a club for drinking during a pandemic. I mean, maybe he's more focused. Like, this would have made a lot more people, win. I mean, Look at Rupp
Yeah.
in the Rio Olympics in the marathon. Maybe, I know he got bronze, but he'd be at least a silver there.
Yeah, that's a good point. But there, I think for one thing, if you look at his Tillis Deposit page and read the tea leaves, he only ran the 10,000 5 times. The man may have just hated 25 laps around the track.
Well,
I don't
I think
know.
that's what. Yeah. So I think this is John's. John's a smart guy. He's done his research here. I think that's the overarching point of like, hey, man, if 10,000s didn't start to dry up, then
Yeah,
what would
that's
have
good. Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
what would have happened? Maybe he would have been a great 10,000 meter runner while being a good but not medalist 5,000, not even making the Kenyan team in the 5,000. But I think he needed more of a change of scenery. He needed a bigger jump up in distance, not just one from 5 to 10, but all the way to the marathon. But yeah, certainly an
Right.
interesting question. It is funny you're saying, oh, he got sixth at the. That's just so weird to think Kipchoge getting sixth. Strange.
It's. I mean, not even qualifying for the Olympics in 2012 is. I mean, he had a great track career. You know, we know the 2003 world champion. You know, he won the world title in 2003 in the 5,000. But
2003.
Yeah,
It's 2020.
Yeah, it is 2020. Still the greatest of all time. Like I said, the Tom Brady of track and field.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best.
That was Mo Farah, I thought. You
Oh
said
crap!
Farah was the Tom Brady. Yeah. Just
Oops.
everybody's Tom Brady for Lincoln.
Yeah, everybody is.
Stick to baseball,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I'll stick to one sport comparison, one sport metaphors to not two. Yeah, good thing Kipchoge moved to the marathon though. Like I said, I think a lot of people owe him credit. The Alpha Flies maybe wouldn't be around if it wasn't for him, and who knows if all these Americans wouldn't be running 2:10. I mean, who could have thought that one man could have pushed the entire 10 Americans to run 2:10, which obviously proves that the shoes are mechanical doping. So, anyways.
There we go. We've made it all the
Yeah.
way back to shoes. FloTrack
Mhm.
podcast at gmail.com. More what ifs. Give us more of your what ifs. We would gladly take them. Tomorrow's show we'll have Gordon and Lincoln, and then Lincoln comes back again on the rare trifecta for Lincoln. Come back on Friday to interview a very special guest. I'm not going to reveal it yet, but let's just say Lincoln is skilled with booking guests.
Just hop in those DMs.
Yes, that's what he does.
Yep.
All right, that's it. That'll do it for this show for today. Thank you to Alon for producing. Thanks to you, Lincoln, and everybody else for listening and downloading. We'll talk to you guys next time.